incorrect material. So they're also sharing facts, but they try to make it a little bit more digestible to the public than educators necessarily do. We definitely at Laguna Ocean Foundation try to incorporate all of that into our efforts.
Thank you so much, Claire. I think
you.
that was the last question.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, I'm going to introduce our final speaker of the day. We're pleased to welcome Dr. Suzie Teerlink, who works for NOAA Fisheries Alaska Region in marine mammal management and conservation. She focuses her work on fisheries bycatch issues and whale watching best practices. Further, she has spent more than a decade working alongside the whale watching industry in Juneau, Alaska, studying whales, studying people, and critically thinking about ways to best maximize sustainability and balance priorities in marine mammal tourism. Welcome, Suzie, all the way from Alaska.
Thanks. It's great to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to join this conference, and it's been really interesting, and the ways in which we all sort of share these similar threads, even though we have really different focuses, stewardship and how to motivate people and science communication. There's just so much to share between them. But I'm really grateful for what I have been able to hear so far and learn from everybody. And I have a presentation to share on a study that we've been doing in the Juneau area. And I know we're sort of running short on time, so I'll try and keep us to the clock. And let's see. Please, somebody tell me if it doesn't come through and you're not about to see slides, because that's the point here. You're supposed to see slides soon. Okay. All right, so the title of the talk is Humpback Whales Sands Tourism, and we'll get into the details of it, but really I want to share about a study where we looked at whales in the absence of tourism as sort of an opportunistic study for this summer. To orient everybody, the Juneau area and the Juneau tour area for whale watching occurs in southeastern Alaska. And I've zoomed in and shown everybody the archipelago of islands where virtually all the whale watching out of Juneau happens in this area. A little about humpback whales. They migrate great distances. This is really just a graph to show you that it is complicated. And the takeaways are that the whales that we have coming to Juneau, Alaska, some of them are similar whales that you might have in California that have migrated past, but most of them are directly from Hawaii, about 94%. And Juneau is a cruise town, certainly something that we're known for, and we have 1.3 million cruise ship passengers who visit in a normal year. That was the number we were at in 2019. And this includes 3 to 4 large ships a day, thousands of people on each one. And then of that, a quarter of all those people are choosing to take whale watching trips. And it's for good reason, because Juneau is a really great place to see whales. Admittedly, we have really great whale viewing nearby, and there's a really good chance that you'll see whales. We also are one of the only ports that you can have a chance of seeing this behavior called bubble net feeding, which I'm showing in a picture here. And so lots of people try to get an opportunity to see that while they're here. And not many people, even locals, appreciate just sort of how important that industry has become to our economy. And whale watching in Juneau is generating a huge amount of revenue, and depending on how you look at it, potentially even more than some of our fishing revenue, which Juneau sort of prides itself for being a fishing community. So this comes as a surprise to many. As an aside, we have a economic report coming out soon that summarizes these data. And if it's interesting, I can share that. So a little bit more about the industry here. There's about 68 different boats that leave out of Auk Bay, which is the same small area, and then just work within that tour area that I showed. This is about 20 different companies operating these boats, and well over 350,000 passengers each summer. And all of those passengers have a money-back guarantee. So those captains are really motivated to make sure that the passengers are able to see whales on that trip. So what gets tricky about this is that while I said Juneau's a great place for whale watching, it is, but it doesn't mean that there's an endless supply of whales. Sometimes there's high numbers, but it really has to do with the prey composition. And sometimes there really aren't. Sometimes there's really just one or two animals that are in the area. These are flukes of two of Juneau's most famous whales, Sasha and Flame. And oops. They have become our Beyonce and Nicki Minaj, and they've become quite famous. And when I talk to people from all over the world, they will tell me that when they visited Juneau, Alaska, they saw Sasha or Flame. So it's a little concerning if there's only a couple whales that can support this industry on some days. Other days, we have the luxury of having a lot more whales that are happening in our area. Just a brief overview of what the regulations behind this look like. So I work for NOAA Fisheries, and part of my job is educating the public about the laws that are in place to protect marine mammals and endangered species. So in both cases, they prohibit take. And Claire did a great job of talking about take. It's not necessarily taking home. It's anything that is, in the case of the Marine Mammal Protection Act, is defined as to harass, hunt, capture, or kill, or to attempt to do any of those things. And harassment, that's kind of a vague one. So we have a definition for that as well. And it's any act of pursuit or torment or annoyance which has the potential to injure or disturb a marine mammal. So applying that to whale watching is really challenging, and trying to understand at what point those thresholds are reached. And in Juneau, as long as their boats are following the Alaska 100-yard rule, staying 100 yards away from whales, they can have sometimes over 30 boats around a single whale or group of whale, and that's legal. So I wanted to just share a couple of our programs. I think it's relevant to this group and some of the other campaigns that I've heard about today. So we have a program that we modified from the East Coast, and they had developed this, and it's been very successful there. And so we created an Alaska region version of Whale Sense. And it's a voluntary education and stewardship program that recognizes companies for raising their standards of whale watching and education on board. And it's been hugely successful. We got companies not only in Juneau, but all throughout Alaska who have joined. And some of the things that they do as our participants, they agree to more than just the 100-yard rule. That's the law. So then beyond that, they agree to slow approaches and slow departures, limiting their time around whales. They train all of their staff. They pay more attention to how they're advertising and what expectations they're giving passengers. We also have a ride-along program. So we go and we put people on the boats to make sure that the compliance is there. So there is an accountability piece. And then we also have a community component where non-whale watching companies can show support. Another campaign that we have is more targeted towards a general boater. We have a lot of recreational boaters out there who are interested in seeing the whales in their backyard, and rightfully so. And so just making sure that we have a consistent message between those commercial operators and recreational boaters. We have the Give Whales Bubble Room campaign, where we give people stickers that they can put on their boats or anything they want to. And we share this type of content, which really mirrors and echoes a lot of the whale sense principles into the general public. So back to our current state here, we have programs in place, we have laws in place, but we still have what I would say is sort of objectively a lot of boats in an area. And many of us have for a long time tried to understand what type of impacts there might be from that many boats concentrated in whale watching in a specific area. And in 2014, I took on a study to look at stress hormones in whales in this area. And it turns out that it's just really challenging to do if you don't have appropriate baselines from which you can compare. And, you know, like everyone else, I had no idea that there might be. And the coronavirus pandemic has for Alaska essentially canceled all cruise tourism. And for Juneau, that basically means no tourism. And there were a few boats that went out sort of on odds and end trips, but nothing like what we have had in previous years. So we scrambled to put a proposal together and to collect data while we could. So the goals of our study were first to determine how many individuals were present and for how long. So we're really looking at how whales are using the area. And then we were also interested in stress hormones, so we could compare those to other years where there were more vessels around. This is our team. There's many people came together to make this project happen. And I won't go through each one, but everybody was absolutely integral to getting this project off the ground. We collected data most of the summer and into the fall, and we were out about 32 days. For photo ID, we were able to see over 60 whales, a bunch of mom calf pairs, a lot more than we normally would see, and some whales spending up to 4 months in the area. We were also interested in steroid hormones like cortisol. So our primary method of collecting those data was to use a biopsy, a remote biopsy, to collect skin and blubber from known individuals. And for this, we were able to sample 25 different whales, and 11 of those, we sampled them again after 30 days, which will give us some information about how quickly that's turning over, or what the change is in blubber cortisol over time. We're also interested in blow sampling. And so we took blow samples using an unmanned aircraft with Petri dishes installed, flying over the blow as a whale exhales. And we were able to get some samples this way. And in some of them, we had paired samples of a biopsy that was taken on a different day. So we could start to look at the way in which that stress hormone might manifest in blubber versus blow. Something about 2020 that is complicating for us is that it was a really good year for prey. So these are pictures of an echo sounder. In each one, there are whales diving on herring, and you can see the arch of the back of a whale as it goes down to the red mass, which is just a big school of herring, in most cases herring. So we have to factor that in, and we have to understand how those might also play in, making it difficult to interpret. We also have an acoustic component. I just want to bring this up because I think it's a really fantastic element, but this is a collaboration. We didn't do this part ourselves. We worked with Sound Science Research Collective, and their question was, in the absence of tour boats, are whales talking to each other more? And they're likely to have some really, really interesting research coming out of that. We had many challenges in our fieldwork this summer. The obvious was the COVID mitigations. It's sort of impressive that we even got permission to go into the field. We had so many barriers, and all of the participants had to have authorization from the highest levels of our organization. Our COVID mitigation plan was truly extensive, including forming a team in which we always wore masks, and we would then isolate, for large pockets of time during the summer. And we sort of had to work that part through. And even though that COVID was the reason we were doing the study, we still had to be extremely cautious in that way. We had weather barriers, but we always have weather barriers. So that is par for the course. And then another challenge, I'm showing a picture here of just in the cabin looking through pictures. And we were doing a lot of identifying whales on the fly because we needed to know right there and then which whale was who, so that we would sample them just once, and if we needed a sample from them. So it was a lot of us scratching our heads looking at fluke and dorsal fin pictures. So I probably should have started by saying I don't have any groundbreaking results. That might be disappointing to hear at this stage, but we are in the process of analyzing those data, and really they are baseline data, and we're so lucky to have them, but we don't have really great plans right now for what to compare them to, and we have to, in many ways, we look at these data as being important for future comparative studies. So I have just this one picture here that I was taking during our field work, and I meant to see. So there's a couple of whales in the foreground. It's a pretty picture, and I liked it. And then zoomed in and realized that there was a sow and 2 cubs on the beach in the back. And it's not that uncommon to have these kinds of wildlife experiences in Alaska. It's a really fantastic place, along with all these other beautiful and incredible rich places that we live. But there was something about that experience of being out without as much activity and sort of really sinking into a wild place without much else there. And it made me think that regardless of what we find here, the opportunity, the hidden opportunity in my eyes is that we are forced to have a pause. None of us wanted this pause. None of us would have asked for this. But with that might come the opportunity to sort of think strategically and intentionally about how we might rebuild and grow from here. So that is it. I will stop sharing my screen, and I think that I kept us on time, or hopefully.
You did. Thank you so much, Suzie. That was really informative. Lots of thank yous. Love the sticker. Such a cool picture. Good to have reminders of some of the positives from this pandemic. Great opportunity to get this data. Thanks for the presentation and beautiful pics. We're looking forward to your findings. Great. Yeah, I don't see any questions yet, but we'll just wait just a few minutes to see. You have any questions, Jen? Okay. Great. Well, thank you so much. You, oh, what, Roman? Oh, question. Oh, I turned my brain away and I got a question. Megan McKenna is asking, do you think the increased prey relates to decreased human activity?
Well, thanks for asking that question. I just appreciate the opportunity to clarify on that, because I don't think that was related. We have, over the last few years, we've had big fluctuations in prey availability, and they've been more linked to greater oceanographic processes, climate-related processes. For example, you might have heard of the blob, which is a odd term for a large water mass of warm water in the Gulf of Alaska, which is changing our prey composition. And because that is less present this year, it's probably the reason that the prey is better. and not necessarily related to human activity in that way.
Nicole. Thank you. Nicole Turner says, super interesting that you all were able to have this pause with decreased visitation, allowing for the collection of unique data. Many national parks experience the opposite with the same or increased visitation as more people got outside. Okay.
Yeah, isn't that interesting how it changed things in such different ways? And we did notice more recreational anglers this year on the water, and we talked to our harbor masters about that. And so there were a lot more recreational boats out than there might normally be, but given the nature of our industry, it still provided a really stark contrast.
Oh, I have another question. Sorry if I missed this, but is there any chance of limiting the number of boats that are allowed around whales at any particular time? If that was implemented, do you think that would cause other unintended consequences, such as increased competition to make it to the whales first, causing other disturbance?
That's a great question, and we get that a lot. So there are no federal laws that do that in that way. And so trying to implement a law that limited the number of vessels around a boat would be forging new territory, and it would require a lot of political will, and it would require a lot of support from the community and a lot of staff time, but it also would require a lot of foundational science to back it up. So not impossible, but I don't think that it would be easy for the government to implement that, the federal government. That said, there are places where state laws are taking effect and applying to state waters and marine mammal viewing in state waters. And there are sort of other ways to do things. And right now, what we're doing is working with this voluntary program with Whale Sense, and we're trying to encourage best behavior through incentive. So more the carrot than the stick.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Nicole. She says, any reason you all didn't collect fecal samples for stress hormone analysis?
I would love to. The water here is so murky that we would certainly have to have one of those impressive poop sniffing dogs, and we don't. And I don't know anybody who has found a method of collecting feces as reliably as you can get a blubber sample or a blow sample. Occasionally you can find it, but it seems to be pretty hard to come by. So maybe I'll write that into the next proposal.
Thank you. And we'll train up some dogs for you, right?
Yeah, the whole part. I'll just sort of turn my house into a kennel, and we'll go that way. It's kind of, thanks for the encouragement. That's all I needed.
I have a beagle for you.
Awesome. Well, on that fun note, I think we will adjourn. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for including me.
Of course. Okay, we're going to have another spin it to win it.